Good afternoon. We'll start off on our deliberations. I'm thankful to the Week and to Manorama Group for having invited me here and given me the benefit of such a wonderful group of discussants. One I know really well, Vinod Khandare, who I worked with when I was Secretary of Defence. And he was a difficult guy to get along with, but he was otherwise quite okay. Mr. Narang I know as a serious student of Atmanirbhar and defence. So in fact, I very shamelessly copied from one of his articles that one of the articles in a journal he co-edited on Atmanirbharta and aerospace to use in a class. General Pandey is a very distinguished soldier and has kindly agreed to start off the discussion on future of Indian warfare. So without, our plan of action is like this, that we'll first take stock and then I will ask General Khandare to start off, because he's the insider, right? So he'll tell us where the status of the reforms are from his perspective. Then we'll move ahead to General Pandey, who will tell us about how he sees the future of warfare evolving. And then we'll have Mr. Group Captain Narang tell us about Atmanirbharta and aerospace. And then maybe we'll take stock and I'll come in with whatever I can contribute at this stage. So without any further ado, General Khandare.
Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sanjay sir. And I just want to start from the position that you've already heard the Honorable Raksha Mantri, you heard General Pandey speaking. A lot of it has been covered. I'll try and minimize the repetition part. And I think whenever we get to a question answer session, I think a lot of it can further be amplified there. Actually, this is a season of such seminars. Just 2 days back, I was sitting here, and I'm sure there were a lot of you who were here who heard us speak on indigenization, self-reliance. So it might be a repetition, but I'll try and avoid that. Now, when we talk of reforms, while it's a very good, so to say, year of the reform, but reform doesn't start in a year and it doesn't finish in a year. Changes have to be for a good reason. Changes have to be continuous. Changes have to be wedded to the past and taken to the future. There were a lot of myths which a lot of people like us, we grew up with. It was quite normal to say that wars will be short. Then somebody started saying wars will not take place. And then somebody said, okay, within the first 7 to 10 days, the international community will intervene. Now everything is there for you to see. Wars are not short. And the era of no war thought process amongst armchair strategists has also gone out of the window. And the international community intervening is for a very good reason. It is to sell you product. And that is the reason when we started off with this Atmanirbharta. And I want to generally take you along from the time that I have been involved, and like Mr. Sanjay Mitra said, I had the fortune of working with Mr. Mohan Kumar, Mr. Sanjay Mitra, Dr. Ajay Kumar, and then Mr. Girdhar Armane, and now Mr. R.K. Singh. So generally whatever I have seen, I'll try and explain that. So firstly, the realization that for the future, indigenization is the only way. So you heard the Raksha Mantri talking about positive list. So positive list is with a timeline, and it is expected of the industry to get onto that self-reliance mode, manufacture in time, and for that particular period we are not blocking anything. But after that timeline, then we are not going to import. The incentive that has been given for various people in the budget is also which has been spoken of. My first point here is about the people who have to realize that they have to change. And this is where I want to draw your attention. Please focus on to what the present Defence Secretary spoke. And that was at the Subrata Mukherjee Memorial Lecture on 10th of January or 9th of January. And Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary would remember. I think that was one of the most candid talk that he gave. And I want to just unfold it to you. He used very plain speak language in which he said, we have been lagging behind. it's a broken policy. Within a year or 6 months, we possibly may have a new DAP. He spoke about luxurious timelines. He spoke about gold-plated QRs. So anybody who wants to understand that the user himself is wanting to change, please go to social media, and on the internet you will find this speech. Absolutely plain talk. Similarly, when Raksha Mantri had a meeting on 31st December with the secretaries of the Ministry of Defence, and looking at the year of 2025, what did he tell them? He said we need to bring a lot of changes in this coming year, and that is why it was the year of reform. So again, this is also on open source, and PIB site, you don't have to go left and right. Please open that and read. You'll see what exactly has been said. And there, emphasis is on theaterization. Emphasis is on innovation, indigenization, which further improves the jointness, integration, and enables us to get a strong armed force. In this entire ecosystem, the onus is not only on the uniformed services. It also involves all defense ministry entities. It also involves many other ministries. Interministerial coordination has to take place. Coordination with NSCS has to take place. There have been changes in the last couple of years. The Defense Planning Committee underwent a change, and there were particular charters which were given to them. Again, that is on internet. Please go and read what is the kind of charter that has been given to them. Why are all these structural changes taking place? Just to speed up. Direction has been given, we need to speed up. The border area infrastructure, it had a lot of deficiencies. But again, this DPC headed by the NSA, represented by the important secretary, Secretary of Defense, External Affairs, the Foreign Secretary, the Expenditure Secretary is also a member. So the point here I am trying to make is, in that one particular meeting, you get to see what kind of changes the government is trying to bring. And after that ministry, it's not too difficult for the NSA to walk up to the Raksha Mantri and then go to the Prime Minister and say, this is what change we are wanting to do. What all have we done, and how has it happened, and how is it going ahead? A point which Honorable Raksha Mantri mentioned, that corporatization of the ordnance factories, converting them to DPSUs. And he said that not much is spoken about that. That was a very big step, and I happened to be a member of that committee. And we saw how smoothly the changes took place, and it was long pending. They were working on a cost plus model, the services were suffering. So anyway, that is one more model which is quite successful. One part which, when we talk about defense exports, so there were silos, and one silo in particular was the embassy, which had the ambassador and the defense attaché, possibly not in that alignment of trying to increase defense export. That has also changed. The charter has changed. Defense wings all over the world, the optimization of the defense wings has taken place. It's continuing also. There were certain countries where we had about 10 officers in that particular embassy. So optimization took place. There were countries which had 3 defense attaches, or military attache, naval attache, air attache. We realized that we are not doing much with them, so we reduced 2, kept 1. We realized which is the potential market where we need to have DS. So you find now DS in Philippines, Armenia. So obviously that is also correctly aligned. How did this start? 2016, the MOD requested the NSCS to carry out a study, of which I happen to be a member again. In 3 months flat, everything was done, passed on to the services. Services did take due diligence, a lot of time, and thereafter started the work. So again, it did take time. I think we need to cut short such delays. Empowerment of the defense attaches to enhance export meant giving them money from the government resources so that they could hold events and project to the world outside that what we have. So that was yet one more thing which was done. Recently we had a very good such exposure at Berlin, which one of our DS did. He also did it in Switzerland. So what we are trying to do is to reach out and see what more can we do. The issue of IDEX was also mentioned, IDEX Aditi. A lot of startups got encouraged, and we've been visiting the startups, we've been hand-holding the startups, trying to get them a lot of visibility, a lot of... What is lacking even now is the orders, and what is lacking is the specifying of MOQs by the user. I think that is a missing gap that still needs to be covered. IDEX, when it started, people possibly thought it won't work, but it has worked well. We need to improve it further, and Aditi was brought because of space. Now here I'll talk about the new age warfare, and in which space and cyber are two important things, and there are officers here who've been there right from the inception. The formation of Defence Space Agency, Defence Cyber Agency and Special Operations Division, the approval of that was based on what the MOD sent to the PMO, and Mr. Sanjay, Mitra and I, we had walked up to the NSA, shown him everything, some changes had been brought out, and that is how it was born. Still in a manner yet to unfold its full potential. Good officers were posted in both these, but like in October 2018 the sanction was given. By the time the officers got posted, it was well middle of 2019. I think when we create new organizations, we need to get our human resource policy more agile so that we get the best officers there. Unfortunately, after 2019, in 2020, there was COVID, and they created a lot of problems for both these agencies. More of it is being done. So now, in October 21, Prime Minister goes public and he announces that the exploratory work in space, outer space, will be done by ISRO, and whatever is requirement of the services will be done by the private sector. And then reorganization, restructuring takes place even in ISRO. And now what we were working on, space-based surveillance systems, so all that has been brought together, compressed, and 54 satellites have been promised, out of which again 31 are with the private sector. So what we are trying to do is to encourage the private sector. But again, if I ask you, all of you here, what is it that we are doing to encourage the private sector? In that particular video conference which the Prime Minister had, we had our own indigenous mapping startup, Map My India. If I ask everyone here in this hall, how many of us are using Map My India? Please raise your hand. I can count. And if I can count means, if we don't commercially give it a lot of emphasis, then they'll die. The other point is, you look at another thing that was done at NSCS, and why I'm saying NSCS is because that is the experience that I had. I think Anshuman is here. Anshuman? Okay, he would have, yeah, okay. NSAB took into account what we need to do for dual use growth, dual use progress, dual use technology. The Meher Baba competition, he had been one of the, or possibly the architect, and suddenly we started moving ahead. One more thing which he was responsible, and that I must tell you, the semiconductors and the technology infusion, which obviously is useful to us also. Now, when I'm talking of space, GPS will be shut off whenever we want it desperately, it will go. Kargil, it happened. Navik is something that has been pushed for. Their dependence on semiconductor import from Taiwan is most catastrophic, and we need it fast. So again, it depends, get the chips, and Navik will become more accurate. So again, that is in the space domain. Cyber domain, I don't want to talk too much, but yes, services have again got their act right. General Pandey is here. During his time, the TA route was explored, and I would compliment you that when we need human resource, you obviously cannot convert a soldier into a cyber specialist. It will take time. So you look for young people. So that is one more initiative that has been taken. Climate change is one more thing which impacts all of us. And that climate change part also, Eco-TA, and again the army under General Pandey at that point in time did a lot of work. Now what actually is the issue with defense production, everyone has been speaking, you've heard, we'll come back to that's all for now, we'll come back to that. Thank you.
Thank you, General Khandare. We'll come back. We have other speakers. General Pandey, would you like to take off?
So let me give a perspective from the practitioner's point of view, who's been in field operations for last about 11 odd 10 years. I need to talk about the nature of warfare, how it's changing and how it's going to change for the Indian subcontinent, Indian context. So firstly, very briefly, the definition of nature of warfare is, it is a constant, and it's been constant over millennials. It is primal, is violent, it is has a factor of chance. It is basically for imposition of one's will, presumed to be with political objectives in last about 2 centuries worth, in which expansion of your territory, your management of resources, and of course expansion of your ideology are primary concern. But you know, when we thought about globalization, geopolitical linkages, geoeconomics, global reliance amongst each other, the development of modern thought and rapid evolution of technology for the larger mankind, we all thought the nature of violence will be tamed, it will be much better, and it will be handled well, and therefore there will be less violence and all. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the asymmetry in the global society, the competition for resources, migration of human resource, the effect of climate change, and the spread of radical thought through the digital device which made the world flat, actually has changed the level of the nature of violence, and which is going to be nature of warfare, which is going to be much more violent, and of course absent of careful radical thought. I'll briefly go over what has been the Indian experience till now since independence. So we have been actually very great at traditional warfare, having won 71 and Kargil conflict, but our experiences continue to remain moved into the conventional warfare, in which it was basically restricted to land, with very little experience in air warfare in 65 and 71, and some degree of experience in 71 at sea. Now what has happened is the successes of 71 and the Kargil conflict has ensured that our focus continues to remain at operational and tactical level for a long time. And therefore, which is very, very hierarchical and moves in a single sequence driven, and is slow, sluggish to actually reform. And as brought out just now by General Khandare, that we need to learn from the history and thereafter go ahead for our future, scanning the future battlefield. So what has happened is that the change will continue to remain sluggish because we continue to remain moved to a conventional domain. Unfortunately, we are going to have the next war or even conflict, which will be fought along the entire domain. That means the equal contribution of land, air and sea is going to be quite evident and has been talked of in all forums. Warring countries like China, and I will use very carefully the word called proxy countries like Pakistan, possibly emerging, another one is Bangladesh, and then proxy non-state actors, for example, number of them which are within the country and outside, which have got influence especially because of radical ideology and the corporates which got influence in our country. And the emerging role of paramilitaries, which you can see in Myanmar, is going to come calling home. And that is the nature of war which will be widespread, in which the traditional line of military versus military along a line where it needs to fight war is going to be not only blurred, the war is going to be taken deep into the civilian environment, wherein everything is going to be game, and this is the lesson which is quite clearly emerging between Israel, Gaza, and the Ukraine-Russian conflict. The other domain which was very briefly touched about was cyber warfare, created for the human good, will be the new realm of war fighting. And in fact, cyber warfare has become now a critical facet for human survival. And yet, it is going to be a game changer in which denial of critical infrastructure on which the human mankind today lives on is going to be targeted quite effectively. With agencies operating from across the world, it doesn't have to be known that who's your enemy in this game. So this is a major issue. The third facet which is going to come into play is destruction via versus denial. Denial of critical infrastructure used to be a norm, especially for military. We never touched the civilian infrastructure because of a certain degree of decency. But the change which is happening in the nature of warfare, in which rational thought is taken over by irrationality, that we now see in both these recent conflicts, that destruction is going to be the norm. And destruction means that we are going to bring the other country down to the dust, and therefore destroy its economy forever is going to be the norm. That is a challenge which we need to start looking at very seriously. The fourth space is information space, the mind space, in which while we have been part of it for a long time, we are at the receiving end, in fact, for some time. But that is the place where it's going to play a game. Disinformation, management of information warfare, which is a very critical part of grey zone warfare, is going to play a very important role. It is going to polarize target population, particularly in the Indian subcontinent, where the fault lines over 8 decades have been widened, cemented, are going to be exploited very effectively, and we as Indians should know, understand it, and we need to understand that our war fighting is not going to be on the borders, but our third front is very much alive and to be seen. A lot of people feel that Kashmir and Northeast are one of the areas where we'll see conflict of the third front, but I, for one, feel, having been all across and watching things emerging, I think it's going to span across the country. Drone warfare is the most important disruptive element in war fighting which has come about. Unfortunately, the Indian security establishment, even having seen the destruction power in 2020 in Armenia, Azerbaijan, actually we dismissed it as a very important game changer. Even the effect of Jammu airport incident in June 2021 didn't stir us. But fortunately for us, we need to learn from the Ukraine-Russian war, in which drone warfare is turning as a different arm of war fighting altogether. And therefore, the investment is really started in the real earnest. Much more has to be done, because from large drones to miniaturized drones, there is no place in which human and machines can find space to hide. That's the change. Hypersonic, long-range, lethal weapon systems have changed the paradigm of war fighting, in which the ranges no more are restrictive, and we can reach out to destroy with greater accuracy, much more lethality, civilian infrastructure which is going, and we are watching what is happening with father of all bombs being dropped by Russian through the glide systems deep into the territory is one form, and therefore the perception that nuclear deterrence is going to stop war is also off the table. I will wind up and to just explain one facet, that proxies, disaffected, radical thought believers, there are huge number of people within the country which will play into the hands for deep pockets for power in fighting the war against the nation itself. And we need to watch against it. And that's the nature of war which we are looking at tomorrow.
Thank you, General Pandey. Group Captain Narang.
Thank you, sir. First of all, it's a privilege to be sitting among such august gathering, and with such, I'll say, senior and respected functionaries of Indian Defence Forces. Coming to what General Pandey said, managing change is a function of leadership. And Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary on 15 said, history will not be kind to senior leadership if it is not familiar with the nuances of technology. Nuances I've just added, but words to that effect. Technology is the pillar of change. If we understand that, then we have to understand, we have to create organization structures, policies, mechanisms to make the technology leader. Our northern border adversary or rather neighbor is progressing because of technology. So having understood what reforms, it's a momentous changes we are talking. So I will talk of momentous changes. I propose 4 defense reforms and 2 civil reforms for jointness in technology development and to make India Atmanirbhar in defense and aeronautics. First reform, you know, I'm a ex-defense personnel, so first is look at yourself before you propose reforms in others. So first reform I propose, make the defense forces lead, steer and become equal partner in defense technology. How does it happen? By creating R&D verticals. We already have design verticals, but they are not adequate. We have to understand the nuances, how design directorates or design verticals are different from R&D verticals. There are global templates like Office of Naval Research, Air Force Research Laboratory, Army Futures Command, Army Innovation Command, even our northern neighbor, the PLA Research Laboratories, Plan Research Laboratory, PLAF Research Laboratory, are we aware? So I think we need to pick up the best, what is suitable for us. I understand that we want to be very specific. So create R&D structures, since we are talking of reforms, first in DMA, Tri-Services Jointness in Technology Development. Second in Headquarter IDS. How will it do it? We can discuss it. Third, R&D structures. So enhance the scope of design to R&D, get the right people, create career profile, create suitable involvement in the design and development so that they are not the auditors, they are the partners in the development. Coming to the second reform, now I come to a little more challenging subject since I'm not the expert, but I say reforms in IAS. Why IAS? They are the people who drive change. They are the people who lead change. Why only be neutral? Why not be a leader? They are there, but how do we do it? It's a novice researchers, ideas. They should be able to take decisions. They should have the experience before they come to the highest echelon to take the post, and they should have the nuances of understanding of functioning of critical aspects which are defining the trajectory of Indian defense technologies landscape. So what I am proposing, I am saying create a technical branch within the IAS on the lines of defense forces, but which are very specific to the IAS. They can find out the modalities. These technical people have the technical branch, but there should be some sort of career attachment to the defense. There should be some sort of career tenures in the technology development trajectory. And third, they should be able to understand the technology trajectory. Because I find there are many decisions which remain unattended. So that has to be addressed. The third reform I propose, we are talking of momentous changes. Reforms in defense finance. They are equal partner in the strength, success or failure of projects. So we need a techno-finance experts in the defense finance. So they should also at some phase of their career have an understanding of functioning of the different defense entities in the public sector, private sector, defense forces, and they should understand the trajectory of defense technology. If they do not understand the defense technology, the change will not happen. We will only have superficial reforms. The last, the fourth defense reforms, 2 civil reforms are still left. This is the Defense and Aeronautics Commission. So I'll give you an example. The decision, if we have to take a decision on which naval fighter have to be taken, is it TED-BF, AMCA, it can be on stalemate for a long time. But if we have people who can take call on this, we will resolve a lot of problems. Similarly, issue of aero engine. We still don't have a flight test bed. We don't have a high altitude test facility. It is understood. We have our trials have been delayed by the foreign OEM, and we still don't have these problems addressed. So the impasses, the indecisions, or the critical decisions. So we need a such higher body where inter-services issues, services, DPS users, services, private industry, services academia, or amongst themselves. I think the true jointness in the technology, and remember our northern adversary is advancing. If we look at the structures of China or US, there are lessons for us, but we have to be pragmatic in adopting those reforms. Then two reforms which I feel are very important for Indian defense industry to really achieve its zenith. One is reforms in Ministry of Civil Aviation. Why I say reforms in Ministry of Civil Aviation is they need to take the ownership of aeronautics, civil aeronautics technology. In 2023, we bought 1150 aircraft for $115 billion. And China bought 164 aircraft for, I think, only much lesser, 16 point some billion dollars at the nominated cost. They were able to get a final assembly line of Boeing A320neo, and we were not. Of course, Indian industries are led by private sector, but we have to find mechanism, otherwise we cannot keep lagging behind. Similarly, there is a drone technology evolution. There are no R&D initiatives like Federal Aviation Authority or EASA. Why? Where it will impact India's global drone hub mission, which India wants to become by 2030. So I'll give you an example. UTM policy was issued, but technology adaptation is pending. Remote tracking was policy was there in the 2021, but still we don't have a remote tracking solutions. Civil military integration. I authored a paper called Military Civil Technology Fusion. We have only been talking of civil military integration of China and US. But why not adopt it in India? So this is the second civil reform which I am proposing. Military civil technology fusion. Policy we should make it in India. It should be able to leverage the combined capability of military civil technology capabilities. The policy must be followed by a roadmap and an action plan. No policy is useful if you do not translate into an action plan with the clear accountability. I think these are some of the things. Just to last point, in IDSA, we did 2 special editions on Atmanirbharta in defense and aeronautics. It's a journal for defense studies, and sir has graciously mentioned about one of our journals. I think we are moving in that right direction. We are all thinking in the same direction. Now is the time to take action. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Group Captain Narang. Several important points have been made. I'd like to flag some of them and ask my co-panelists to kind of go ahead and talk a little more. Let me share some of my concerns. General Pandey is here, Air Chief Chaudhary Sahab is here, you are here. Have we gone ahead and made some kind of a, like the chiefs are, he's a legal entity, right? The Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Air Staff. Is there something coming around for the CDS as a, instead of being through the rules and through the delegated legislation, are we thinking of a law? No. Okay. So I'd recommend from this thing that we need to have a law. If the Army Chief and the Navy Chief and the Air Force Chief, 3 of them are here, former chiefs, do we need a law? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, so this is just a thought, but the law kind of gives the status to the chief concerned to kind of control, discipline, and superintendent's power of superintendent over his entire force. Having the CDS operate through a set system of delegated legislations seemed a little unbalanced, so maybe there is some question about this. The big driver of all these innovation is going to be procurement. And what should be the role of defense services in the procurement? This is something which has not been addressed. And I feel that, maybe you should have a bigger role in it. But then what will be the role of the civilians in the ministry? That's a big question. And that is something that the policymakers will have to take into account. Because otherwise this will keep on going around in circles, because you will want something A and then it will not come through. Maybe you should be responsible for whatever you want. I was also wondering to ask General Khandare or General Pandey or Chief Chaudhary that did that delegation of powers to the 500 crores that were given to the army commanders, did it work? Has it led to faster procurement? Has it led to faster decision making, at least at the level of army commander or the force commander at that thing? If it has, then maybe we can make it bigger. Well, I remember one of my colleagues who's told me, "Aur zyada mat delegate karna, because this is getting too much. You have to sign off on lots of things." But maybe there's a way to look at it. I am actually very interested about the drones question. General Pandey and General Khandare, and all three of them spoke about drones. I have a question. Unless there is a, General Khandare also spoke about minimum order quantities. Unless the industry has an idea of what the size of the market is going to be from year N forward, they're unlikely to invest, they're unlikely to look for technology. Currently it's all start and stop, right? You decide to buy N number of drones at this point of time, and then you decide to buy some more drones. But there is no idea of the whole size of the business. And that, I suppose, will come from the change in the doctrine. I mean, that every section will have 2 guys running a drone, something of that kind. I mean, my acquaintance with the defense forces is very short. But I spend my time with some very smart people who actually told me a lot of stuff which they wouldn't normally tell a civilian. One of them is here. So, so is there would you have made changes in the way you fight, that there are, instead of guy carrying a radio, there's a guy carrying a drone? That will give you, multiplied by the number of fighting units, give an idea of the total size of the drone. And General Pandey will give an idea of how many small drones you need. वो तो नहीं है. That is unfortunately not there. And now that I hang around with academics a lot, and also some industry folks, they keep on saying that if I am an MSME or a small scale guy or a startup getting into this business, I need to get an idea of the total market in year to come by, and that is not there. So another very interesting thing, that I read a very nice book recently called Unit X by an F-16 pilot in the US called Raj Shah. I happened to run into him in some seminar. He said something interesting, and that goes back to General Pandey's issue of hierarchy in the Indian Armed Forces. There the defense research people went and met the fighting soldier on the front. Would that happen in our set system? I mean, I'm not very sure. Okay. If I'm glad that it has started, and that's, so I'm actually, you'd be noticing that I'm also trying to acquire knowledge which I'll disseminate elsewhere. So if that has started, that's a very good thing, and it should happen. So I'll now request, so another question that I had is, joint tenure become a minimum mandatory requirement for posting senior post positions in the armed forces? That has been in prospect for 6 years. So prospect पहले होना चाहिए था. I thought that would be the first step. Anyway, so I'll now again request my colleagues to go back and speak on the various issues they had in mind. I'll start with General Pandey. He's going to speak on future of warfare and how it will all go ahead. He's going to speak on that. And then we'll have General Khandare, and then we'll go back to Group Captain Narang. Please.
So I'll essentially talk about the duration of war, I think, which is a very important facet, and was articulated by General Khandare briefly. The fact is that today, with the absence of credible international organization which can pitch in and stop the war, which you always presumed, and a very enlarged, spread over military industrial complex all over the world, which is not willing to stall a war, but in fact ensure that enough trillions of dollars are invested in the countries which are fighting to expand the war and to extend the war rather than starting. While there will be very polite noises which will be made by the governments and people, but essentially the money is pouring into Ukraine and of course in Israel and Gaza to ensure the war continues to progress. So this facet of the nature of war, which is to be having certain degree of rationality, is now going to be diminishing, and the period, the more longer the war goes, the number of people who are going to actually die in the civil environment, the destruction which is going to be caused to resurrect the country or a province or a location will take that much of a time. So I guess that's a facet which we as a Indian establishment need to understand, that while there will be enough people who will want you to fight the war, and we understand where the future of war is going to be, there should be a very, very deliberate consideration taken to unleash the animal called war, because it takes its own shape, size, and thereafter time to actually get stalled. The other facet is that this will of people, so-called the one principle of nature of war was imposition of will of people, but today in the kind of polarization which is happening, the leadership which are involved and the radicalization of thought which is there, you can just take the example that in Gaza, for few hostages, they continue to die. And the will of the people is not yet broken in spite of number of tons and tons of ammunition which has been dropped upon that. And therefore, some time back we should think that we can carry out a great maneuver and we can isolate the enemy and isolate the mind. But unfortunately, the future of war is quite evident if you take the sampling of these two ongoing conflict. And we also understand what is going in the mind in our region. You realize that polarization is so deep that will is going to be that much difficult to be broken. It will take time to take place. And with this, I feel that we need to understand that the 21st century, the first the quarter of the century, has actually given us a tiding of a trailer of sorts what is going to emerge. Because in the first decade, we were very, very happy of talking of pivot Asia as the new pivot of the world. Right? It's a great slogan. But actually, has it manifested in something good for us while we were imagining? When you look at the recent 1 year events which are happening, starting from Balochistan to Myanmar and to the borders of Bangladesh and Manipur events which are panning out, I don't think that so-called pivot Asia has come as a very great tiding for us. It may look very nice, but there are fractures which are happening which we need to actually watch. The shifting of geopolitics and geoeconomics, which used to be certain constant, the partnership alliances looked very stable for years to come. Today we are not very sure what is going to pan out the next year, next month, even now, with the kind of leadership which is coming out. And of course, the protectionism is going to be the first cause which will ensure where we are going. And therefore, what is very, very imperative is that we need to have a resilient, agile force structure and processes which is able to take on what is going to be thrown onto us in terms of technology, ever-changing war-fighting system which are going to come up. Because with AI, with robotics, the war-fighting nature is going to become much more nuanced, much more changed, and we need to be very, very ready to. So we have already taken about a decade and a half to carry out certain degree of reforms. Is that the way we need to adapt and go on to the future? Is a question which we need to ask, that our system of bureaucratic processes to even adopt a change takes years to happen. We need to have possibly modify to the current system which is required to be in place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have one question, actually a bit of a complaint. I don't see the heads of the Defence Cyber Agency or the Space Agency or the Special Forces Agency. I mean, there was a lot of bloodshed when these things were being created, as indirectly alluded to by General Khandare. But, if you want to talk about the space integrated ecosystem of, encouraging startups and MSME, I thought that's the chap who will be the focus. The head of the Defence Space Agency is a tri-service person. I was wondering, that's somebody I wanted to see here, as also the head of the Defence Cyber Agency. The Special Forces guy will, of course, come later. That's a different kind of animal. But this is my first issue. I mean, what happened? And so there was a lot of effort being put into this, and currently we seem to be again gone back into defense, service-specific arms doing cyber and space and things like that. So that's a question that I would like to pose. General Khandare would now further talk about whatever he had to kind of build on whatever he had said. Thank you.
One of the issue which you correctly said, sir, about do the civilian experts reach the soldier? And let me tell you, sir, it is happening. And recently, something which was not so broadly described, but you heard, I think 15 days back or so, one of the battalions hit hard, and they picked up the intruders, and the intruders happened to be from the Pakistan Army. One of them was the second in command of a battalion, fairly senior. How did the CO of 7 Jar do it at Nangi Tekri? he's got his cameras, his surveillance act right, and all of them are Indian cameras. Now, what does that mean? That our developers, designers, developers, with the help of the soldier on ground, is doing a good job. This needs to be encouraged and maybe spoken a little more, at least within the close circles. So this is one part which I thought. And when we say, another thing which I want to explain is about the services. They have spoken about the year of absorption of technology, or the decade of absorption of technology. And one of the events which I attended of 21 Corps, where the soldier, the officer, were actually handling the equipment which is supposed to be given to them. So I think that last mile gap is also being covered well. Now MOQ, sir, I want to just amplify this, because that is the lifeline for the indigenous startups and MSMEs. About a week back, General Dwivedi mentioned that he would like to see every soldier having an FPV drone. Now for the lower ones, is it so difficult to describe how many MOQs or what do you want? Because that will very clearly tell the industry how they want to invest. Okay, one more example is when we went indigenous in a joint venture manner is about the AK-203, Russians and the ordnance factory. Was it difficult to describe the MOQ? No. We straight away said 7 lakhs. So we know generally how many rifle users are there, and the army said 7 lakhs. Out of that, okay, not the army, the tri-services. And then we had to make some adjustment of about a lakh of AK-103. But what point I am trying to make is, it's not difficult. As long as we are able to do it, then the industry gets spurred into action. One of the mention I want to bring out here is Swavlamban, which is of Navy. They did a fantastic job. I think 2022 June, they went in for this sprint. What does it mean? A small group of 3 or 4 officers working directly under the Vice Chief. In the Air Force, the small group works under the Deputy Chief, and in the Army, ADG, ADB again works directly under the concerned Deputy Chief. So there is a structural change. There is an attitudinal change. If there is a change, now what more is required? Speed. So if we are able to speed up, then we will be able to do something better. Space, you mentioned, again here, what we used to be doing is look at a huge satellite which would, we were told it will last for 5 years, then it lasted for 10 years, then it lasted for 15 years. The technological cycle changes every 18 months. So even if you count that it was changing every 2 years then, but how many cycles would we lose because ISRO had put a huge satellite on top, and while we needed small satellites of maximum 100 kgs and maybe lasting 3 years, and a constellation of that same weight. So those thoughts have already come in, and people are endeavoring to do this. Initially the first lot may have been of the attitude. Now that attitude is obviously changing, and the younger ones as they keep coming up, and most important is the training part. So like the present Air Chief mentioned at one place that while it is always good to say we will fight and win with what we have, so if there is a technological gap, which there is, so the armed forces automatically devise tactics for it. So at the ground level again, tactics and technology. It's not that you will stop fighting, you will fight, but tactics will have to be devised. But again, don't give such a handicap that the other guy has got a 5 generation and you're still struggling with a right.
I would like to bring 4 mid-term goals for Atmanirbharta and military civil technology fusion, and 3 long-term goals for India. The first is drone integration and drone technology leadership in India. So there are critical gaps in the policy structures and all. Similarly, there has to be Atmanirbharta policy for all in all ministries and structures and plans. I also, in the next 10 years, I look forward to having a civil aircraft final assembly line being set up in India. It's very important because our military transport aircraft manufacturing is not picking up. If we have a civil manufacturing assembly line, it will strengthen our aeronautics ecosystem. Next 10 years, I look forward to indigenous aero engine, AMCA, naval fighter, light and medium transport aircraft. In the long-term goal, I look forward to a consolidated military civil technology fusion policy being implemented in India. We look at indigenously designed, developed, manufactured commercial aircraft flying in next 20 plus years or so. If we are able to do that, we will be really making, I think, one measure of India becoming a developed nation by 2047 will be commercial aircraft designed, developed in India. That will be the measure of India really becoming a aeronautics power. The second part will be Atmanirbharta in critical technologies such as materials, electronics, sensors, payload, and advanced propulsion systems which are emerging. And the last part will be a real aeronautic revolution will happen when we become world-class manned and unmanned technologies developer and manufacturers. Thank you.
Thank you to my thanks to my colleagues for a very kind of illuminating discussion, and I hope we have not bored you to a very large extent. I'd like to close on one thing. General Pandey spoke about fault lines. Just as a civilian, I used to work in West Bengal. I was the chief secretary there, so I used to often go to this Fort William grounds to for helipad. I was always charmed by the notice board there. There was a list of presidents of the golf club, which were essentially Eastern Army commanders. I was fascinated by the list. It kind of represented everything that the armed forces meant to me. I mean, you had Henderson Brooks, and you had Manek Shaw, and you had Jacob, you had Jamil Mahmood, you had Brad, you had you had pretty much every Bakshi, Chauhan, Kalita, Sen. I mean, it was all over India, all communities, all groups. I mean, that is the kind of armed force. At least I was a civilian, die-hard civilian till I came to the Defence Force. I continue to be one. But I leave that thought with you that going forward, maybe diversity is one way we can handle the fault line. Thank you very much.